Hey folks, Steve here with another PAX Romana Scenario 10 video. This turn we'll be looking at turn 3. That would be 250 to 225 BC. And I've already taken care of the uh, initial phases of the turn. So income, reshuffling the deck, uh, and the leaders, and unit creation so that we can get more or less right into the action. And hopefully I get this video as short as I can possibly make it. Because I know these videos get long, and gosh, who wants to watch 2 hour long videos all the time? I don't want you guys to do that. So a couple of things for the beginning. Turn 3 starts a special rule, which is oriented around the Roman legionary cavalry. So what this means is that when you have two Roman legions involved in a combat, that is effectively um, a like treated as if it were a cavalry for comparing the number of cavalry in a battle to determine superiority and supremacy. So if you have four legions, that's two cavalry, and so on. This is really helpful because what it means is that the Romans are no longer in as much danger when it comes to combating the Carthaginians or anyone else for that matter who would have cavalry. So before they didn't have any, so they were always susceptible to cavalry supremacy, which is a huge shift. When you work out the math, a d6 being shifted 3 times can basically cause any battle to go one way or the other. So they don't have that weakness now, and they will hold this strength, this Roman legionary cavalry, until turns 9 and 10, in which case they go away, but they get other benefits. Um, so something that will be so that's a goodness. The one not as good thing about it, I guess, it's not really a bad thing, just it's not as good as it could be, is that the Romans cannot get cavalry supremacy via this rule. So it doesn't matter if they have their legions, which count as cavalry, and the opponent has none. They don't get cavalry supremacy. The integrated cavalry is just not as good as dedicated cavalry. So the most that you can get is cavalry superiority, which is worth 1 shift. But again, that cavalry situation will keep supremacy from happening to the Romans, which is a really good strength. So they'll have that benefit. If the Romans want cavalry supremacy, they will need to supplement their legionary cavalry with actual cavalry units they get from Gaul, the allied cavalry kind of situation. And even then, you have to have as many or more, I think, dedicated cavalry than legionary cavalry against your opponent to actually get the supremacy. So it's just something the Romans can't expect to get. They probably don't want to worry too much about. But the main thing is they have now some capability to operate further afield, where cavalry is more likely to be encountered, and they don't have as much to fear. This also means that any of the Carthaginian armies with cavalry aren't going to simply be able to encircle the Romans, at least not right away. So worth talking through. As we enter the game, the turn order is going to be Romans, Carthage, the East. The player with the least victory points goes first. And so, at least I'm pretty sure that's the case, right? I'm pretty sure. uh, and then I think everything else is pretty well situated. So to talk very briefly about what the powers did with their income. So what's amusing is that everyone kind of wound up with the same amount of money. The income for Rome was like 14, the income for Carthage was 15, the income for the East was 20. But what ended up happening is that the East Babylon booty call roll actually took 5 talents from the East. Um, and then everyone suffered a little bit of that corruption penalty and lost a talent. So the economies, for as good as the East is doing, really in most respects, that Babylon booty call came back to bite them. You can imagine maybe there's some rebellion off in Bactria or something. and they lost 5 talents for that. So it's sort of a balancing mechanism for them. They have off-map stuff. It can be a boon, it can be a bad thing. In this case, it was a bad thing, which kind of keeps the economies equal going into this turn. But the East still holds a lot of advantages at the moment, so something that will have to be looked at. Um, the leaders turned out okay. The East got a 2-4 in Antioch. That's pretty good. The big army ended up getting a 1-5. So not as good, but can move a lot, which might be more important since the leadership may not matter against the weak Greeks at this point. For the Romans, they got a 2-3 in Rome and a 1-3 in Corsica. So kind of middling, but pretty good for the Roman one. It's just, what can they do to make use of what they've got on the board, and I think that's the tricky thing for the Romans. They're not sure what they should do next, other than to fight the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians ended up with a 2-4 in Carthage and a 2-6 in Sardinia. So a pretty darn good leader, really. I mean, that's almost elite in my opinion. I mean, you get to move so far, you're just not as good at combat. So he's off on the army chit. In terms of what people bought, so both Rome and Carthage have tried to build up some, replenish their armies for further fighting in the Sicilies. I expect that to continue to be a primary area of concern for both sides at this point. So there was a focus on that occurring. The funny thing is that after you deal with the income and you pay the corruption, and then you figure, okay, you're going to build some units, but you also need 3 talents to pay for your activations, and probably want to keep a few talents in reserves to rebuild a city like Carthage is planning on doing. You, you still end up, with not being able to build a lot of stuff. That your economy's not big enough to be purchasing, 10 units like we were doing in some of the Greco-Persian war turns. So each side bought a handful of units. Rome really just built some more legions. That's the only thing they can really build right now. The Carthaginians built some heavy infantry and some light infantry to supplement their forces. The Eastern player did buy some heavy infantry. I'm sorry, I think he built a light infantry. I did this a little bit ago, so I'm starting to not remember. But he built another galley because he wants to have a very potent navy to not just hold the coastlines and the critical choke points over here, but to be able to take a galley further afield towards Greece if he wants to. That's sort of the main thing there that he's thinking through. For the first time, one of the powers spent a talent to buy an objective marker. It was the East. The East felt like it had enough sort of, how to say it. They could afford to spend a little bit on something that is not immediately on the board, and they pulled an objective marker. They bought that for 1 talent, and what they got was objective K, and which is have a city or town in 5 different territories other than the player's home territory, which would provide 6 GOP, which is that's a pretty big deal. I think that's going to be tricky. So you're going to do a town. We have 1, but it's different territories. It's not just provinces. So this is incentivize. If the East player wants it, this incentivizes the Eastern player to have technically Egypt as its own territory in this scenario. So maybe they get a town in Egypt. They get a town. Well, they have a town in Asia Minor. They would need a town out here. I mean, when they talk about territories, so this one, while it provides a lot of GOP, is almost, in my opinion, impossible to get. Like, this would be very difficult to achieve, I think, for the East. So you could see this as a waste of a talent, maybe. But there you go. Each player still holds a card. Just as a reminder, Carthage has a naval ambush. The Eastern player is sitting on a Conqueror card that they cannot use yet, but when they do, it will be quite powerful. And then Rome is sitting on a tactical surprise to maybe turn a battle quite in their favor when the time is right. So that's kind of where we're at. The general strategic considerations, I think, for either side, the East can kind of sit pretty if they want. They have the capability. They can kind of sit back and focus um, on building and improving places. They don't necessarily have to change a whole lot of what they're doing. They could even hold steady right now and not have to worry too much because they're in a good position, all things considered. You probably want to clean out some of these Greek units in the backfield, but that would be it. Um, the Romans and Carthaginians are understanding that challenge that the East is fine. Rome needs to expand. Obviously, expanding at the expense of Rome is a great idea, but it is the most, difficult one. It's the same thing with Carthage. They want to keep consolidating control of the Sicilies, but now they're in a real fight with Rome for it. Meanwhile, they're starting to expand in Hispania, and if they can do that out of the reach of the Romans, then they simply may be in better shape at that point. Um, so they've got to think through all of that and figure out what truly is the best path forward for them. Taking control of Hispania would be nice. So they've got to contend with all of that. Rome has to think about Gaul or the Danube or Germania to try to gain some additional territory because they're just eating it on GOP right now. They need to expand. They need to gain control of more territory. It's just not an easy way for them to go at the moment. If this were an opposed game, this would certainly be an opportunity for the Roman and Carthaginian player to try to come to some agreement. Say, hey, look, the East is running away with the game. We ought to do something. If this was a 4-player game like scenario 6, well, then the Greek player would be, fending off the East. But in this game, that's just not as feasible. So you would think in an opposed game, the players maybe say, hey, listen, why don't we split the Sicilies right now? And let's figure out a way to go slow down the East. But it's hard to get over there, so how do you even do that? Um, but me playing solitaire, it's like I don't know how do I adjudicate two factions maybe calling it quits. Again, the East is very far away. How do you influence them? What you need is Egypt to wake up and start rampaging. Maybe the Carthaginians to spend more actions activating Greek units. But if they do that, then they're not activating as much against Rome, and Rome can take advantage of that. So sure, they're probably saying, "Hey, go activate the Greeks. Go stop the East player. What are you doing?" And the Carthaginian player's probably saying, "Well, quit trying to take Sicily from me." You say, "Well, Sicily's in my area of control, or it's in my sphere of influence." And you get into that people politics, people diplomacy of a game like this. So who knows? So we'll just have to play it and see what happens. The Romans are going to pay their 1 talent. They're going to draw an event card. They get Soldier of Fortune. So they can place a Soldier of Fortune army as per 12.4, unless you are the Roman player, in which case, okay, that would be the case. 12.4.7. Okay, in the advanced game, if he gets the SOF card, he may hold on to it to ensure that no other player receives it. Alternatively, he may play the card in order to bring a dictator into play if and only if there is an enemy army in any space of his home territory. So that's not the case. Okay. So this is, we can hold on to this card, and we certainly will for now. Maybe we'll ditch it. Maybe we'll get to use it. Playing it for the dictator thing just means we ditch one of our leaders and we get to draw 3 from the pile and pick the one that we want, which is a greater chance of pulling an elite leader, basically, and using him. But right now, there's nobody in home Roman territory any longer, so there's no real use for the card at the moment. So for now, they'll just do activations. So I think what I'll do is I will make the Roman moves off camera. We come back, we'll sort of see the results. If it's something really interesting, we'll do it on camera. And then we'll just do the activations that way. Try to keep this video shorter now that we're already 15 minutes in. Okay, so before I do anything with the Romans, I need to point something out. I realized as I was planning out my moves He said, well, the Carthaginians could do this naval ambush, right? Sounds pretty good. And I was rereading the rule for how this worked, just to make sure I had it right after the last couple of times. And apparently, I didn't have it right. And in fact, I've played naval ambush wrong uh, both times. Both times that I did it, both for sinking Pyrrhus into the Adriatic as well as sinking the Romans off the coast of Sicily. So the way I thought it worked, and to me is still probably more interesting than how it actually works, is that if if a fleet moves within 3 movement of a fleet, you can send your fleet there and have a fight. That's how I thought it worked. But if you actually read the rules, that's not what it says. So I sort of took I don't know, an assumption. I said, oh, it's like a naval interception, and you can have grand naval battles with an ambush and all of that. Well, that's not how it works actually. And as best as I could research on Board Game Geek, apparently, how this actually works is that if a transport fleet, land units moving by sea, have a galley escorting them, then you can't ambush them, which I guess makes sense. Again, right? Like in the big scheme of things, it makes sense. So only when a naval transport fleet of land units and a leader, or without a leader, whatever, um, moves unescorted within 3 movement points of one of your galleys, can you play the card. And when you do, you just instantly obliterate the army. Just instantly obliterate it. Now, from a strategic standpoint, that does some obvious things. If you knew that that's how the card worked, you would be very careful of doing a naval transport unescorted. Maybe because of where galleys are in the overall situation, you can't afford to have a galley with that group, or maybe you need your galleys elsewhere and you don't want to use that as your escort. Um, but if you're going to do that, you don't want to do it within 3 movement points of an enemy with a held card, because that held card could be naval ambush and you could lose an entire army. Now, because I've played it wrong, it benefited the Romans because Pyrrhus was destroyed. I can't even begin to contemplate the effect that has had on the game in error, because what it really meant, because Pyrrhus was escorted, he should have landed in Italy and he should have, been fighting in Italy well. But that didn't happen. But on the opposite side, a Roman army could have invaded Sicily and have taken much of Sicily. Very likely, very potential. The potential was there for that. But instead, the Romans got sunk with a naval battle and the whole thing. So I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to let the 2 previous instances go. They were fun naval battle spectacles, but going forward, I will play the held card by the Carthaginians. I will play per the actual rules. So this is my mistake, guys. I'm very sorry for making such a big rules sort of error and assumption. Thankfully, it affected both factions where it mattered, so it can kind of equate a little bit. Try to say there's some equivalency there, but I just have to move past this. But I will play it correctly now, which means on the Roman move, where they were going to possibly move this Roman army with an escort, that they could not be navally ambushed. That cannot happen. They will not be ambushed if they move with an escorted galley. Now, because all the sides of my brain, Rome, Carthaginian, or otherwise, know that that's how the naval ambush is supposed to work, you will probably not see me ever do a unescorted naval transport near an enemy fleet. So it kind of makes the naval ambush card like not as valuable as it could be if it was just you move a fleet and there's a fight. But now the person who has it just has to keep their eye out, like who's dumb enough to make this move, who forgot about this or doesn't have, who wants to risk it, because you don't know if someone happens to have that card and you think, okay, I'm going to try to make this naval transport run, kind of gambling that nobody has a or that my opponent who I'm nearby doesn't have this very specific card in their hand. And when you really think about like how many naval ambush cards are there, well, there's a few, but the deck's pretty big, so it's a small chance that they actually have it. You could probably get away with trying it some of the time. I think for the Romans in this case, they have enough galleys on the map that they can do an escorted movement. So for them, they're not going to open themselves up to a big weakness here. But you can start to see that edges into the solitaire. Who knows what each player has in terms of cards, all that kind of stuff. Gets challenging. But I do think the Roman player wants to try to contest Sicily, and they're going to do that with their first activations. So sorry for the intermission. But we'll activate the Romans. What they'll probably do is, if they get enough movement points, they're going to come down here, maybe try to take Syracuse back, maybe try to push in towards Lilybaeum while it doesn't have as strong of an army in it, and just try to push the Carthaginians back as much as possible, kind of get through a first Punic War in full and take the Sicilies for Rome, which Rome is desperately in need of some expansion opportunities. So this would be the best one that we could imagine. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, here we are after the Roman activation. I guess the Carthaginians probably should have thought this through a little bit better. Syracuse was just waiting to be attacked, and the best I can tell, this was the best move for the Romans. They activated, they came down with escort to here, then they moved to here. Now the Carthaginians tried to intercept and failed, just barely failed, to get into Syracuse with something. The Romans obliterated the walls left on Syracuse and took it, and then spent their minor moves repairing Syracuse to a full city, and then moving another infantry down a little bit. So the Romans have invested in Sicily now, and would like to continue to push against the Carthaginians. Now, this isn't like, even if they can't hold everything here, the important thing is the Carthaginians are now having to react to what the Romans have done. That's kind of the real important thing here. So that activation is done. There is a Carthaginian naval unit here, and I want to say nothing happens to it right now, and there's no Roman naval unit there, so just nothing occurs. But if that unit is not moved with a minor move or something else, it will be destroyed at the end of the turn. So it sort of puts a penalty on the Carthaginians. They have to move something or they'll lose it. Case in point, it's going to go to the Carthaginians next. They pay their talent. And let's see. They draw a card. They get tactical surprise. So they'll hold on to this, obviously. And what may end up happening is, if there's a crucial fight, I suspect both sides would play their tactical surprise, and they would negate each other, probably, but we'll see. So yeah, now we are left with the Carthaginian activity. So what to do? Well, there's, I guess, plenty to consider here. The Carthaginians could try to outflank over here and eliminate these guys. It just depends on what happens. The Carthaginians could also move to try to attack in Corsica. Now that could go poorly, or could go, well. It's just very hard to say. The Carthaginians have one naval ambush card. They're probably not thinking that they need to worry about another one in particular being out there, so they might risk transferring over to here. They could be intercepted, and then it's a real question of, well, can the Carthaginians actually win against that Roman army? And that would probably be a close one, I bet, because this force is 12 combat factors strong. The Carthaginians would attack with, 9, 11, 13. 13 to 12, so you really don't get a shift there. I think the way it would work out to be cavalry superiority for the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians would basically get 2 shifts. So that's pretty good, and it's probably worthwhile attempting it. Or we try to boot the Romans out of Syracuse, but that's probably a tall order. So it might be the most efficient thing to retake control of Corsica and then consider how to get into Italy proper from there. It's tough to say. So let me think through this, and then I'll show the aftermath of what we decide to do. At this point, the Carthaginians have to try to do something to get some ground back, or make some investments elsewhere. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, so the Carthaginians did decide to use their major move to fight for Corsica. The Carthaginians actually chose not to use tactical surprise, but the Romans did. And so this sort of benefits the Carthaginians because now the Romans have used theirs up, and the Carthaginians can use theirs for a second combat, probably for Syracuse later in the turn. But unfortunately, after 2 combats, the Carthaginians are kind of worn out. They are reduced to heavy infantry and 2 cavalry with their leader, while the Romans just have a single legion. They had dealt enough damage in the first combat to basically reduce the cavalry capability of the Romans, which meant the second fight should have gone much better, and it sort of did, but it's just getting tougher to make headway. With the minor move, they put a galley up there just to help protect that Carthaginian army, and then with the other minor move, I got ahead of myself a little bit. They moved the heavy infantry out to one of the towns in Baetica from Carthage with the intent to create a city later in the turn. So you can see that there. So yeah, relatively straightforward action. Likely going to focus on the conquest of Sardinia. I'm sorry, Sicily, rather, in the next Carthaginian activation. Next, we have the East. Pay their talent. They draw their card. And this is disease. Only the good die young. Roll a d6, comparing the result of the campaign rating of your highest rated leader. Oh, no. Okay, there is a tie. So we pick one. I think we're going to pick our leader in Antioch for what it matters. And, okay, so he has died. Unfortunate. Yeah, okay. Well, that sucks for the East. They lost the leader. And now they have to do something with the rest of their activity over here in the eastern sector. So that kind of hurts. That kind of nullifies some of the capability to do actions. Yeah, that's a bummer. That is a bummer. Well, I think what they will do with a minor move, we'll just do this very quickly. We're going to spend 2 gold and 2 talents, rather, however you want to look at it. And we're going to create another town up here, which will increase civ points yet again. And then what else do we want to do? I think we could try to have one of the Pergamum units go. Have multiple movement points. We'll do that. I'll just take care of the rest of this off camera, guys. Okay, here we are after the Eastern activation. So we used some of the Pergamum units to beat up on the Greeks, and then the East used their big movement to come in here, and they actually took Sardis, put a heavy infantry garrison, and moved back to here. So a little bit of danger with this guy being able to potentially come across and cause a bunch of problems. in Pontus, but nothing that the East couldn't resolve if they had to, I think is the important thing. So they're picking up a town. They don't have the money to repair it right now, so they're going to leave it low strength, but they think between Pergamum and the other eastern units nearby, this is not a big problem. So major coup for the East. They continue to expand their power. And we'll go to the cup. We'll start pulling additional ships. And we get the East again. So good for them. They pay their talent. They draw a card. Independent expansion. You may place at no cost a garrison in any one unoccupied space within 4 land connections of any of your land. Combat units. I believe this is a card that is not affected by anything. Yeah, I do not believe that this does anything. So, I do like the idea of trying to do something with this. It's a free garrison, so I think they'll go ahead and just put one there just to kind of help slow down the Greeks if they decide to come across. Just play it right away. And then with their actual activations, wow, what to do here, guys? They'll do an activation up here. Have more than enough to come on down. And I think what we're going to just do is start to build up an army with the destination to take Egypt at some point. We'll just slowly start to build up the forces there. And then otherwise, let's see, we'll do it with another guy. 1, 2, 3. And I think that's all they need to do. So gonna go to the cup. And we get Carthage. So Carthage is gonna pay their talent. Draw their card. Conspiracy. Designate any one non-elite on-map leader belonging to another player. Ooh. Well, I think, let's see. I think they're going to do this Roman leader right here, right now. Bam. Conspirator. And Roman stability goes down. This is showing their hand, obviously, that the Carthaginians are going to go for Syracuse next. That's sort of their primary objective. So let me get things started. Probably going to activate this leader. And we'll just do that right away. He's going to have 8 movement points. Will that be enough? We'll see. We'll come back and we'll see the aftermath. Okay, so clearly the Carthaginians did not take Syracuse. As I was looking at the situation, the Carthaginians are at a tremendous battle point disadvantage right now. So they chose instead to run over here, pick up units, come over here, move over here to where there's picked up units, and just stand by, because he's going to have to take another activation, I think, to be able to do what he really wants to do. We did use one of our minor moves to improve one of the towns via that heavy infantry we moved last time and improved into a city. So Carthage is at least making some expansion in a relatively safe area far away from Roman hands, because even if you build stuff over here, if the Romans can get on site, then it just becomes a disaster. So we can at least put them farther away where it's harder to get to navally. That's the idea anyway. So unfortunately, we just couldn't do it because there's 12. You got to look at the situation. 12 combat factors plus Syracuse is 17. That's very potent, very hard to get into. We could try over here. We'll have to wait and see. I'd rather have a lot of movement points to attack over here maybe, and then who knows? It's kind of tough. So we'll go to the cup again. He's like, that looks like a big stack. It's a bunch of 1 light infantries. Okay, Greek activation. Well, this is kind of what was needed here. And all there really is to do, I think, is oh yeah, tough. I think they just try to make their way over here. Let's see what happens. Okay, not much to write home about. I rolled very low, and this army doesn't have a leader. So they had enough to basically attack across the strait, eliminate a garrison, and that's all they can really do. What this does do, though, is it deprives control of Pontus from the east, so the eastern player has lost a province for the moment as they crossed into Nicomedia. Go to the next chit in the cup. And it is Roman. This is the second Roman chit. They haven't gone in a while. They pay their talent, draw their card. Tribal Resurgence. No event, because all the tribes are still around. So then this does kind of pose the question, what to do here with the Romans. They're kind of limited in what they can really achieve. They could try to attack more in Sicily, but it would probably be at a disadvantage here. As I look at this stack, there is some cavalry, but not much. So maybe they do try to push into Sicily further. It's hard to say. So at the very least, they have to decide to do something. Pushing here is probably a mistake. That force is probably too strong due to the cavalry advantage. Here might actually be worthwhile trying, but then that reduces our ability to defend Syracuse on the back side of things. So I don't think there's anything they can do by passing. There's not much they can actually achieve with that. The only thing would be, do they try to... Well, I don't know. So, I don't know. We'll come back and we'll see what happens with the Romans. And what could be the most useless activation of the game? These guys moved over here, picked up a unit, came to Agrigentum. The Carthaginians actually chose to retreat. And then the Romans went back, dropped off a unit, went back to Syracuse. Doesn't really impact anything, doesn't impact control, but it does kind of push the Carthaginians back a little bit, and that's all she wrote. That's all we can really do. All right, going to the next chit in the cup, we get another Roman activation. So this is the last Roman activation, honestly, and so kind of have to think through, what can be done. What can be done here? Is there anything truly worthwhile to accomplish? Yeah, that's a tough call. I think what we'll do... Oh boy, this is tricky. Oh man, there's nowhere to go. I kind of want to reinforce these guys, but it's all dicey. I mean, can you pass? You probably can pass, and just not discard the talent. Yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to discard. They're not going to pay the talent, and no activation occurs. So we just go to the cup. Romans would like to do more, but they're kind of stuck. They need to recruit more units. They need to do more things. We get the Carthage activation, the last Carthage activation, and then it'll be the East. Carthage pays their final talent. They draw their card. They get spies. So think they look and see that they're going to go ahead and play this to see what the Romans have. They find that the Romans have the Soldier of Fortune card, which doesn't do them any good. And so what can Carthage do? Well, I think they can still try for, well, it's going to take some weird finagling to do stuff over here. They can try to get Corsica back. I think that's probably the best choice, so they will roll for that 10 movement points, and we'll deal with the aftermath here in a second. Okay, so the Romans pushed into the space of Corsica. The Romans withdrew with their galley escort back to Italia. Knowing that they kind of don't have that many great places to go next without opening things up, and because that army is pretty reduced, they were willing to just stop here. They got Corsica back, and then with the minor moves, they moved some galleys up here. So the idea is next turn, they've kind of got their galleys a little more spread out. Oh, you know what? My bad. They put one more galley up there. They have to move this other galley back. Actually, I guess he could go all the way up there. That's not a problem. Okay, we'll do that. Fair enough. Get that guy out of Syracuse. Get him up there so that we have a naval capability to invade up here in the north. I think the Carthaginians are fine and happy with that end result. Then we have the east. They pay their last talent. Uh-oh. Successor wars roll on. This is Egypt. This is the Egypt action. So let me go see how to adjudicate this. Okay, so what happened? With this roll, if the East player drew the Successor Wars roll on card, then the Roman player controls a major move activation for the Egyptian army who try to do something up here. That's basically what the rolls boil down to. Lots of reading there, but there you go. Because there's no Egyptian leader, though, they rolled a 4. They couldn't get very far, and so an army came over here, fought, hurt the East army there a little bit, and then went home. You're supposed to put them back. And ultimately, there's not much more of an Egyptian force pool to build up, so that's it. And the East player was smart to put something here in Gaza because basically they couldn't get very much farther, and that was it. I mean, it was a try. They plunked some Seleucid guys off the map, but that was it. A couple battle points, and that was all. So now the East gets to go, and what do they want to do? They're out of money. They probably want to attack the Greek army. So we'll make that activation, get 10 movement points, and I think they certainly will try. I would suspect that the Greeks are going to have a hard time with this one. They would have 14, and this is 14 with 2 elephants. Maybe they'd stay and fight. Okay, so after several fights, the East player did force a tattered, barely hanging on Greek army consisting of 1 heavy infantry back to Greece, consolidating control of Pontus again, and overall just being in relatively good shape. Though the East did lose an elephant unit, so the strength is being whittled away of that big army there. So East is starting to become a little overextended. They'll certainly want to be doing some things to fix that over time, but that is really the end of the turn. No more activation markers remain, and that brings us to the end. So we are going to look at the attrition and isolation phase. As best as I can see, there's nothing that really indicates isolation needs to occur. So we'll do the victory phase and talk through that next. Okay, time to talk victory points. Definitely an improvement for the Romans this turn. So let's go through it. GOP. The East has 8 GOP, same as last time, effectively. The Carthaginians actually also have 8 GOP. If I look at this, the Carthaginians have 4 provinces in addition to the 4 that they start with. So that gives them 8. And the East has gained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 provinces in addition to the 3 that they start with, which gives them 8. So they are leading for first, which means that we are going to have, let's see, rounding down fractions. So if there's a tie for first, each would get 5 victory points for that. And then the Romans get 2. So Romans get 2, 5, 5. It's a pretty good spread there, 5 victory points. For Civ, we actually see an advantage for the Roman player. The Roman has 12 civilization points for having 4, count them, 4 cities. The East comes up just behind with 10 civ points. That comes from 3 cities, 1 town. I'm sorry, 3 cities. Oh, I miscalculated actually. 3 cities and 2 towns. 3 cities, 2 towns. So that gives them 11 civ points. So just behind. And then in third place is Carthage with 9 civ points. That comes from 2 cities, 3 towns. So a little bit of advantage for the Romans for the moment. So this means that the Romans get 5 victory points for that. Then second place gets 3 points, so 3 more for the East, and then 1 victory point for the Carthaginians, which means that Carthage gained 6 victory points. Rome gained an astounding 7, which means they're not in last. And the East gained 8. So what this means is Carthage goes down in stability a little bit because they were the ones who gained the least victory points this turn. A nice change of pace for the Romans. That still leaves us with a pretty wide spread of victory points. The East at 28. 28 victory points. Carthage at 19. And Rome at 17. So Rome is still in last place, still fighting it out with Carthage. The East continues to hold a commanding lead just due to their strength of stability. They can afford to maintain 8 provinces. They don't need to push very hard to gain more provinces right now. And they can continue to invest their money in civ points and possibly begin to edge out the Romans because they just don't have a major enemy. The Egyptians could pose a threat, but they're just not as active as they could be. And that's the real problem. They need to get more active. They need to be up there doing stuff. Greece should be posing more of a threat, but right now that's just not happening. So it'll be tough to say what happens next. I suspect the East will continue to have a lot of strength. They would have probably built some cities if not for the fact that the Babylon booty call siphoned some money from them. But we'll have to see what happens. So thanks for watching, guys. That's turn 3. We'll look at turn 4 next time. That's 225 to 200 BC. Sort of the time frame of the Second Punic War is a big primary concern there. Right now, I'd say we haven't seen much of a resolution to the Great Conflict, but we'll see how it all pans out in the next turn, and we do the income and all that good stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. See you next time.